almost 1 week into Donald Trump's second presidency, so let's get a conservative take on how it's going so far. Mason Burr Strategies CEO Luke Ball up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. Luke, I always appreciate you taking some time for us.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Let's talk about it. I think a lot of the things that people wanted to see President Trump do, he certainly followed through in the first couple of days. But let's get your take.
In my opinion, it was quite an upgrade. It was like going from a Palm Pilot to an iPhone very, very quickly. And it was just really interesting to me that Donald Trump spent the first 24 hours making good on all of the promises that he made during the campaign trail. And, you know, I got to participate in some form on the campaign over the last couple of years and even before he had announced he was running for office. And I heard him on the campaign trail over and over and over again saying, I'm going to do this on day one. I will do this. I will do this. And I thought, how on earth is he going to accomplish all of this stuff? And then he comes in and sets the tone for his administration with an enormous amount of executive orders, fulfilling the promises he made to the American people.
Obviously, immigration has been a main topic from this campaign. We saw a number of arrests taking place. These are the White House even put out a meme today talking about deportation flights well underway. I mean, it seems like there is a concerted effort right now in the first week to really put some action behind some of those items that he signed.
It is, and I think it's sending a shot across the bow to the cartels that for too long have profited off the United States of America. I mean, they looked at how our southern border was operating. They looked at how they could exploit our immigration laws. And so on the backs of these poor individuals, they allowed human trafficking and drug trafficking and child smuggling to occur over our southern border for years and years on end. I've gone down to Yuma, Arizona. I have seen how they've operated, how they'll stand and taunt Border Patrol on the other side of the border. And now we want to make sure that we have a system in place that works for people to come in a legal manner and does not encourage all of this crime. And the other element of this, too, is that we know that there have been at least a few hundred people on the terrorist watch list of the United States that have crossed over into the United States. So this is a national security issue, and it appears as if they are going after some of the biggest threats to our safety and security first.
For people, and I think we know during the campaign, Democrats did not put much stock in the idea that voters vote with their pocketbooks, because when you look at some of the data out there, Democrats can say, "Hey, look, the job numbers are good, the economy isn't as bad as you think," but it doesn't matter if you're feeling the pinch from the cost of everyday living. That's your perspective. That's your worldview out there. What can he do at this point, this early in the presidency, to address some of those pocketbook issues?
I think James Carville, one of the Democrat strategists, put it best. You cannot give the American people stats and numbers and try and convince them the economy is doing well. They have to feel it in their hearts and witness it in their pocketbooks. And so as he's coming into office, I think he's going to start setting a tone for not just the economy, but other things that relate to the economy, like domestic energy production, lifting a lot of the regulations off of that so we can actually get that economy going. Putting these tariffs on foreign nations to allow for domestic production to occur in the United States is going to be a positive thing. There's a whole debate and discussion on that we don't have time to get into, but the ultimate goal is to bring power back to the American worker and making sure that he addresses the issues of a lot of companies leaving the United States, going to places like Mexico, going overseas and outsourcing all of their labor. He's been calling he called a lot of people in the first administration and said, "Hey, I heard you're moving somewhere, and if you do that, then we're going to place a 100% tariff on your vehicles or your product or things of that nature." So doing some of these things right at the beginning and just kind of issuing executive orders related to the economy and making good on some of the campaign promises that he had is not just the one-off issue. He's going to have to go to Congress and make sure that they try to get their act together and pass some sort of a balanced budget and make sure that we also get these economic priorities put in place to lift a lot of the restrictions and regulations off of Americans and maybe incentivize some of our friends around the world to allow for us to have some exportation of our products.
Republicans have the House and Senate. Do you foresee any problem in getting some of those agenda items past the finish line?
It's possible, but this is Donald Trump's party. So if they cross him, they could probably very well expect a primary challenger in their election. And with razor-thin margins right now, it is going to be very, very close. I mean, in the House of Representatives, you can only lose maybe 2 or 3 members. And you've already seen some articles. I was reading one today in Politico about how some of the members of the Freedom Caucus might have to work with Donald Trump and make sure that they get their priorities in order to not have any stumbling blocks in this upcoming Congress. But if they get too riled up up. If they start peeling away too far from the herd, you can expect a very well-funded primary challenger to appear in their backyard.
One of the big stories that made the headlines today had to do with the president making his coast-to-coast trip from North Carolina, which was devastated from Hurricane Helene out near the Asheville area with the floods, out to California. And he said something in North Carolina that's raising a lot of eyebrows when it comes to FEMA and whether or not he believes that sort of responsibility should instead be shifted to the states. Is this the time to have that conversation?
I think he's just enormously frustrated at how FEMA has responded to North Carolinians. I was down in Asheville in September and the weeks following the catastrophe, and I witnessed that there were many veterans that were just coming out of the woodwork from all across the nation, and a lot of organizations that were sending aid to those areas. And by and large, FEMA was not present. And I heard from over and over across the political spectrum down there, they're like, yeah, they've got one van over there. It's in the parking lot of a grocery store, and there's two FEMA workers with the clipboard. They didn't feel as if FEMA was doing the job. And so when Trump looks at an issue, if it needs to be eliminated and something better put in its place, that's how he thinks as a businessman. So I think that also just throwing that out there is a way to get people thinking, how can they chip in on the state and the local level? How can we best maximize our resources on the federal level to leverage it in the favor of those who are hurting the most, as opposed to having all this red tape tied up and allowing it to lay on the backs of the people who are really hurting right now.
Luke Ball joining us here on the show tonight. Luke, always appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
You too, man.
And the Final Five is back after this.